Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Black, White, and Politically Incorrect. Now, this is a really special conversation because there aren't just two of us today. There's actually three of us, and I guess I will start with my regular guest, Miss Susan Patton, but she's not really a guest. She's a regular on the show, and you also see me with my other guest. But I'll start with Susan. Susan is known as the Princeton Mom. She's also the author of the book Mary Smart, and I want to ask Susan, how you doing today?
Outstanding. Delighted to be with you and with Noma this morning.
Yes, and the other special guest is someone that you see me on the air with on a regular basis as well, Miss Nomalanga Mushali Moses. She is the founder of HealthyBlackWoman.com and just an all-around awesome human being. How you doing today, Noma?
I'm doing great, boys. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited because two ladies I have so much respect for agreed to come on and have this really important conversation about this important topic that I'm sure you two have an opinion about. Because both of you usually tell people what you think, I'm gonna tell you what I see, and then I'm gonna start with Noma and kind of get your take on this. Noma, this might surprise you, but this is published on naturallymoi.com, and it says a new poll says black women are not seeking long term relationships. According to this study, which was done by NPR, very impressive, the Robert Woodson Foundation, and the Harvard School of Public Health, and we know Harvard is always right about everything, apparently, right? Like their decision to admit George W. Bush. See, I'm being sarcastic here. Uh,
Spoken like a person who was not admitted to the Ivies, but okay, go
Hey,
on.
hey,
Go on.
lady. No, for the record, I was accepted to Columbia University, and guess what? I turned them down. I walked away.
Secondary Ivy. It's a secondary Ivy. It wasn't
Secondary Ivy, my butt.
Okay, story,
fail.
Lady, you
please.
better be quiet about that. Shoot, I worked hard for that. Anyway, okay, so the study says that most black women, I think they said only a quarter of single black women that they polled are looking for a long term relationship. In contrast to men, where they said 43% of the men that they polled are looking for a long term relationship. And just for the record, they polled 1,100 African Americans, widowed, divorced, never married, and the age range of 18 to 49 years old. What did you think about that when I told you about the study, Noma?
Well, first of all, the age range is 18 to 49, and I'd be interested to see how the statistics look if they split that up. If you took it, maybe say 18 to 25, and then 25 to 35, and then 35 to 49, because I know when I was 18 how I felt about marriage. When I was 25, it was different. When I was 35, it was different. So it's a little murky for me. But having said that, I do think that even though I found the study surprising, I do see how that could happen. I see a lot of women who complain, a lot of black women who complain about the men that are available to them, and a lot of them say that there are not that many men available to them. And of those that are available, I've heard of a lot of women talking about a lot of inadequacy, a lot of disappointment. So I can see how some women can turn around and just say, you know what, I would rather just be alone. That, of course, is not my opinion. I've been happily married for 10 years, but I can see how somebody else can have a different opinion or a different perspective and experience.
Hmm. Okay, Susan, what did you think when you saw this?
I thought, nonsense. These women are not being truthful. Come on. Why ever would black women or any women say, no, I don't want a long term relationship? What? Are you crazy? Why would you not want a long term relationship? I think some of this is defensive, meaning
Yes,
I'm not getting a long term relationship, so I better say I don't want one lest I look like a loser or like someone who didn't fulfill my goals and my what I believe to be my destiny. I also think these kind of polls are just stupid. They're just stupid. People lie. People lie about this kind of stuff. If you ask people, any people, black, white, male, women, female, about money, about sex, about relationships, they totally lie. They say what they think puts them in a positive light. They don't
yes,
speak truthfully. Come on. Somebody said it to me years ago that anyone who talks about or talks too much about how hard they work and how much sex they're having is probably not doing much of either. And I think that's kind of, it's true. People are not truthful on these kind of stupid surveys, and why should they be? For what purpose would they reveal personal information like that? For what purpose? I mean, this is ridiculous. I think most certainly black women, white women, all women do seek long-term relationships because I think the instinct to want to bear children and raise a family is so ingrained in women. It's so natural to most women. And I get not all women want marriage, not all women want motherhood, but I think most of them do. And I think that if they were being truthful, they would say, oh my God, how I wish I could find a long-term relation. How I wish I could find a man who was worthy of me and who I could imagine spending the rest of my life with and partnering with and raising children with and, living forever after, happily ever after with.
So Noma, it sounds like Susan's saying that a lot of the respondents were just being untruthful, that they were just saying what they wanted to say in the moment, and that if their feet were put to the fire and they were really in situations where they either had to be truthful or you judge them by their actions, they would do something totally different. Do you think there's something to that maybe sometimes we deliberately will push ourselves to believe that we don't want something because we don't feel like it's attainable?
Absolutely. A quick story. I remember being at one of my cousin's weddings, probably about 13 years ago, and her and I are only 2 months apart. So what has happened throughout our lives was that we were compared a lot. And I remember being at her wedding, and my grandmother said to me, well, she's gotten married, so you're next. Or, when are you getting married, kind of thing. And my response to her was, no, I don't want to get married at all. And my grandmother almost fell out her chair. And then she says, well, she said, well, at least are you going to give me any grandchildren or great grandchildren? And I said, no, I don't want any kids at all. And it was a very defensive reaction or response, because I felt like somebody my age getting married immediate, especially somebody I grew up so close with and were almost like twins, was getting married. And that put the spotlight on me on, when is your turn? And I had no perspective, anything at that time. The good news is I got married 2 years later, but I can see how sometimes a person can say that they don't want something that they absolutely, absolutely want. Because first of all, they might feel like it's none of your business. Why are you asking me that? Or they may feel like it sounds better to say they don't want it, because the truth is relationships, marriage, anytime you love somebody, it brings out the vulnerability in you. And some people are not willing to put that out there.
Well, Susan, you know what? It's interesting, I think, for most people that are listening to this, because I don't think they're accustomed to hearing a woman who's not black, and I don't want to say a white woman, because I see you as ethnic. I know you're Jewish, and really everybody is from the motherland. If you go back, a couple million
Far
years,
enough. Yeah.
right? Now, but
I'm not that white. I'm
you,
not that
you're not
white.
that white. Yeah, you're a soul sister, but not in the Rachel
Right,
Dolezal kind of
exactly.
way.
Exactly.
We're not gonna Dolezal you though, because we can't go too far with that, right? People get mad
Oh,
about that.
definitely
But
not. Definitely
but
not.
I want to ask you this. As a person who you've commented before on the state of relationships in the black community, and sometimes you've been applauded, sometimes you've been criticized for not minding your own business.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the conversations you've had with black women about
Yeah.
relationships and the advice you've given them and the things you've heard from them?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think it's fascinating that we've come to a point in our society where black women, especially, are outperforming black men both professionally and academically. There are more black women graduating from colleges, getting advanced degrees, doing better in the workplace than black men. I don't even know what to say about why the black men are not keeping pace with the black women, but they're not. So I talk to black women all the time and I tell them, honey, you better find him on your college campus because this is the time to lock and load. Find these guys. They're in college. They got into the same college you did. These are up and comers. These are the people you want to be with, you want to plan a life with. These are the men who will achieve in their lifetime and won't be intimidated by your credentials and by your capacity for greatness. I tell these black women this all the time. And they know that once they graduate from school, whether it's undergraduate or graduate school, wow, you don't want to be out there in the real world trying to find a man of color, if that's what you're looking for, a man of color who is getting it done, who is professional, who is positive, who is successful, who is poised for achievement. It's hard. I'm telling these women, you find them when you're at college. This is the time to find these men, connect with these men, and even if you're not ready to be married at 22 or 23, these are the guys you want to stay in touch with long term. You want to make those connections. You want to cultivate those relationships over time, but don't wait too long. Do not wait too long. I tell these women, because some of them say to me, oh, well, I want to take the first 10 years out of college and build my career, and then I'm going to get out there and find the right man. And I'm saying, you can't wait that long. You wait for 10 years to build your career, you're going to be in your early 30s. You're going to be looking for a man who's 34, 35 years old. He's looking for a woman 10 years younger than you. You can't compete with that. A 33-year-old woman cannot compete with a 23-year-old woman. Absolutely cannot compete with her. I'm telling these women, you got to lock and load when you are in college, because the game changes so dramatically once you're no longer a student. Once you're out in the real world, the game totally changes. And once you turn 30, it's like you fall off a cliff.
Wow, like you fall off a cliff. Wow, that
For women,
that
mind you.
that
For
doesn't
women,
sound
only for
pessimistic.
women, only for women.
Well,
Only, of course, only for women. Men get better with age. They get more successful. They get more distinguished looking, and their ability to get married and have children, they could do that into their 60s, into their 70s. Men only get better with age. Women do not. Women fall off a cliff. By the time when they get 30, if they haven't found him yet, oh my God, the prospects are so bad. Now, Noma's laughing because she knows the truth of this. She knows the truth of this. And how many women do we both know who are in their early 30s who their heads are spinning? Oh my God, what happened? How am I 32, 34, 38 years old, and there's nobody? There are no men for me. There are no men for me. If you were 23, there were men for you. If you were 22, 21, when you're in college, there are men for you. That's when you should be finding those men.
okay, so Noma, you didn't lock and load in college. You met your husband years after you left college. Um,
Yes.
give me some thoughts on what you just heard Susan say, and what have you heard black women
Well,
say when you've talked to them and you've coached them and on this kind of thing?
right. Well, first of all, boys, my husband is directly connected to my college friends. So when I met my husband, he was actually the sister to, let me try and get it right. I had a friend in college, platonic, and he went on to get married, right? And I married his wife's brother. So he was a very good friend, and then I became friends with his wife, and then I married her brother. So it was still true to what Susan is saying in the sense that it was my college crowd.
We're friends, right?
But to what Susan is saying, as much as it hurts me to agree with her, I do agree with her. I think we've had this conversation before. I don't think that women deteriorate with age, but unfortunately, that's how we are perceived. I think that there's more to a woman than obviously how she looks and whether she can produce a child. But that is a huge component of who we are. And that is the truth about getting married and having children, is that, you have to be fertile and you have to have the energy and all those things. And a man in his right mind looking for a woman to start a family with is going to look for a young, vibrant, beautiful woman to settle with and build a family with.
And a woman who has a long fertility life in front of her.
Right.
A woman who's 35 is basically done.
Right. We have a set amount of time that we can have kids. It's a fact. Whether, I hear a lot of women now talking about, well, I can freeze my eggs like, so and so, and they name some random celebrity. Well, guess what? That celebrity has millions to spend on all these fertility treatments and what have you. And even then, sometimes it doesn't work.
Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't work. I understand 15%. 15% of frozen eggs actually wind up producing a live birth. So if you're going to freeze your eggs, you have to be very rich and very lucky and very patient, because it doesn't work most of the time. It costs a fortune and it takes forever. So women have to get it out of their head that this is even an option. It's not an option.
Right. And again, I've been attacked for saying this, and usually by women in their late 30s, early 40s who don't want to believe that they've made the wrong choice. And unfortunately, that choice is irreversible. And then when we talk about men, it is true. Men who are older are wiser. They make better decisions. They tend to have more stability financially and otherwise. And it makes sense as a woman to marry a 30-year-old man because as time goes, he will acquire more wisdom, more stability. Well, most, I should say. I shouldn't put that across the board because some men just don't grow up. But, they're likely to stabilize. They're likely to, become wealthier, wiser, better. Women do also get better with age. We also do become wiser. We also do have more earning potential and so forth. But we can't ignore the fact that when it comes to marriage and family, in terms of having kids and reproducing, as time goes by, that probability gets lower and lower and lower until it doesn't exist anymore. So I don't buy into this whole this school of thought that, men and women are the same, all that crap. It really isn't true. And as a woman, you have to understand that the choices that you make have to be specific to women, and the choices that men make are different because they face a very, very different set of circumstances. And men can graduate at 23, 24, wait 10, 20 years, pick up a 25-year-old, start a family, and live happily ever after. If you try and follow that model, and I've seen the women in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're doing those treatments. Some of them don't have the money for the treatments. They're still hoping. Some are bitter. Some are sad. Whatever. And some have fallen into the category that says, "Oh, I don't want it anyway." So that's a truth that hurts, but it's the truth.
It's absolutely correct. Noma, you are exactly right. I have classmates, men I went to school with who are in their late 50s, early 60s. They have toddlers at home. They have babies at home.
Mm-hmm.
Babies. Maybe it's a second wife, maybe it's a first wife who's just 30 years younger, but they are able to have babies into their 50s, into their 60s. How many women classmates do I have, never married, forgot to get married, didn't make it a priority, were too busy doing other things, and they found themselves in their late 30s and their 40s and their 50s, now in their 60s, saying, oh God, I didn't make it a priority. I didn't plan for my personal happiness. And I tell women this all the time, Black women, white women, every woman. You have to plan for your personal happiness with at least the same commitment and dedication that you're planning for your professional success. For just the reason Noma said, when your fertility has left you, it's gone. You don't get that back, and nothing will fill the hole in the heart that's left for a woman who wanted to have a child and realized she waited too late, waited too long, didn't get it done, and now she'll have to get used to living a life of childlessness. It's devastating for some women. And women are not identical to men. They, of course, should be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, but they're not identical. They're not identical. Biologically, they're not identical. Emotionally, they're not identical. Psychologically, they're not identical. And it's a huge mistake for women to say, well, men can. Well, forget what men can do. Women are not men. Women have a different body. They have a different head. They have different priorities. And women just have to be smart for themselves. And women, each woman individually, has to understand what her own priorities are, what's most important for her. And if the priorities that she has for herself, even if they are politically incorrect, like what I really want is to get married and have children, well, then you better dedicate to yourself to that, girlfriend, because if you don't dedicate yourself to it, it will go so quickly. You'll be stunned at how quickly you're in your mid-30s, no husband, no boyfriend, no babies, and it's gone. It's irretrievable.
So Susan, I'm curious. Have you ever actually received an actual death threat from a feminist? I know the feminists. I know it's established that they can't stand you. Many of them. But have you ever? I'm really curious. Have you ever had an actual death threat? Like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kick you.
I've certainly had threats.
Really?
Death threats. That's maybe a little extreme. But yeah, the feminists have most certainly labeled me the anti-feminist patron saint. It's fine. It's good. I wear it with pride. Okay. I totally get that. I think the feminist movement has been so bad for women and continues to be so bad for all women. The feminist movement is terrible. The radical feminists, the grievance feminists, They have done more to harm women, them and their whole grievance industry. I think that smart women have to reject all of that. It's absolutely terrible for women.
Well, well,
But
well,
death threats, no.
the
I've
reason
gotten a lot of nasty email and a lot of very nasty comments, but no,
well,
not quite death threats.
Well, the reason I'm asking that question, just out of curiosity, that original question was just me kind of wondering. I was wondering if there was actually
No,
any,
probably
I've gotten death threats, when I would go on Fox News and stuff like that. So I was curious to see if you got. But here's what I wanted to ask you. Based on what you were just saying, if I were listening and I didn't know anything about American politics, I would think that your message about women taking control of their futures and their destinies, that's an empowering message. That's a
it is.
message that says,
Yeah,
self determination is the way to go
exactly.
for women.
Exactly.
Which I always thought that at least maybe I guess the most benevolent origins of feminism would sort of speak to that, right? That we don't want other people deciding what our lives are going to be, right? Because for so many years, the husbands were telling women what to do and what they couldn't wear and where they couldn't go. So why would it be that women who are seeking happiness, seeking self determination, fulfillment, the ability to do what they would like to do, why would they reject your message? I mean, is it because you are sort of laying out the idea that somehow they're constrained, not by society but by Mother Nature, that their fertility, has an expiration date, which therefore changes the scope of the decisions that they're able to make and how they make those decisions? Do you think that's what it is, that you're sort of
Well,
hitting them in the head with reality, and maybe they don't want to accept reality? Do you think that's what it is?
well, if there are constraints, if they feel that if women feel like there are constraints on them, it's because there are constraints on them. I'm
Hmm.
just saying it. Noma's just saying it. We're just calling it the way it is. These are biological facts. Why do women reject the idea that they are ultimately responsible for their own happiness, their own safety, their own health, their own success? How could you reject that message? How could you reject that? What sense does that make? It seems to be completely inconsistent with the goal of the women's movement as I remember it, going back, to the Civil War when I was a young woman, that it was all about taking control of your own life. I wouldn't even, I mean, you put it in a negative context and I would have corrected you. I don't think that the women's movement is about rejecting what the patriarchy imposes. I don't think it's that. The women's movement, as I remember it, was about making our own choices, about taking responsibility for the choices we make. It's not rejecting anything. I don't like to even think of it in terms of the rejection of something else. I like to think of it as the acceptance of the fact that we are, by nature, by birth, we are empowered, beautiful, smart, sensitive, wonderful, capable uh, beings that control our own destiny. But there are certain constraints that undeniable. And what a mistake for a woman to think, oh, well, I could wait until I'm in my 40s to start having children. Don't think that. And don't buy the rhetoric that fertility clinics are trying to peddle about how you could delay your childbearing years for decades. You certainly cannot. And how could any woman be so foolish as to be sucked into these extraordinarily expensive processes and procedures that will only lead to heartache and bankruptcy? Women have to be smarter for themselves. They have to recognize there are certain biological truths that are undeniable. You will not be having your babies in your late 40s. It just won't happen. And I know every woman's goes, oh, well, my next door neighbor's cousin's aunt's babysitter's older sister had a baby when she was 40. Come on. First of all, she probably wasn't really 49. And even if she was, that's an outlier. Don't look at that as, an example to follow. Don't be foolish like that. Women have to be smarter for themselves and recognize that at the end of the day, they and they alone are responsible for their happiness, for their success, and for their safety.
Okay, no, so Noma, you are an African woman who married an African American man who has counseled and coached lots of African American women over the years. Um, uh, what do you see in terms of just some of the unique societal factors that play into the hurdles of black women as well as the hurdles of black men? What do you see kind of happening here from an
Well,
outsider's perspective?
I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to, pull apart black women versus white women because, there's a lot of arguments about the statistic of how many single parent homes are there really. Is it 70%? Is it 72? And is it 60? Whatever. The truth is, it's disproportionate. There are more single parent homes in the Black community than in any other ethnic group or whatever you want to call it. So the truth is that we can't apply everything that we say across the board, and we have to recognize that African Americans, Black women, let me say, Black women have a different experience in this country. We have to also look at the fact that what we accept as normal is different based on where you come from. I personally am very aware of the fact that the reason why I'm a huge advocate of marriage and family is because I grew up in a two-parent home with two people who also grew up in two-parent homes, and on and on and on. To me, that's what's normal, and that's what has fostered a community and has offered me stability and a good life. I have no complaints. So to me, that seems like a good decision to make. I do, however, recognize that there are people who've grown up in homes where it was a single parent in the home, and that single parent was a product of a single parent home, and so on. And everybody that they know and that they see in their surrounding is from a single parent home. So what they have normalized is very different from what I've normalized. So it does stand to reason that when you ask them, do you want to get married? They might answer no. Why would I? My grandma didn't, my mom didn't, my aunt didn't, and on and on and on. So it doesn't seem normal to want that. And also, some people don't know how that actually looks. And one of the things that I'm aware of about people is when they don't know something, they demonize it. I hear so many people who don't know people who are married or haven't experienced it and so forth. And one of the things that they do is they tend to say, oh, they're in there in that jail, in that cage. They're so unhappy. Who would want to get in there? I mean, they're so constrained. They have all these fantasies about it being a horrible situation because, again, they don't have that much knowledge and experience with it, and it's not that normal to them. So I just want to say that I do recognize that the experience of a white woman who may have grown up in a two-parent home, not to say that they aren't divorced or single-parent white women, but if that's the majority of what they've known and what they've seen and what they've experienced, and you ask them, do you want to get married? Of course they do. My sister's married, my aunt's married, my mom's married. It's normal, and and they've seen it good. They've seen good things happen in good marriages, and maybe have seen bad, but the good seems to outweigh the bad. You take a Black woman, and unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, a lot of Black women that I've talked to have had horrible experiences with marriage and have ended up divorced. And even those who have stayed in horrible situations. But I've also seen the good. However, I've seen more bad in Black relationships and marriages than I've seen in non-Black, and that's just a fact.
Okay.
So I mean, I was surprised to hear the statistics, but when you really think it through and you look at it more carefully, you can kind of see how it can happen that a Black woman can say, no, I don't want that. Why would I want that?
Okay, well, you know what? We're approaching the 30-minute mark, and I promise you all I wouldn't take more than that amount of time. But I'll end it on a couple of notes. You two, I knew you two were going to suck all the air out of the room with everything you had to say. So I was going to let you two just go at it. And not that you were arguing, seemed to be on the same page. But I just sat there silently. But two thoughts that came to mind that I think connect to what you're saying. And just for the record, I don't believe that there's a right or wrong way to live your life all the time, unless you're not, as long as you're not hurting other people. When I talk to my daughters all the time about issues they're going to confront, and I try to become very sensitive to what women go through to understand what they're looking at in the world. I just tell them, choose the life you want to choose, but don't let anybody sort of persuade you into wanting or not wanting things because they think you should or shouldn't want those things, right? So if you don't want to get married, then I don't think you should feel pressured to get married because in the South, where I'm from, there's a lot of pressure for Black women to get married before the age of 25. A lot of my friends made that decision and they weren't happy with it. But at the same time, you have that other influence on the other extreme that's saying, "Oh, men are garbage, families nothing, children are worthless, your career is all that matters." And I let them know you may regret that. When you get a little older, you may look back and say, well, maybe this wasn't the right choice. And it's okay if you made that choice as long as it was your choice and not a choice that was pushed on you by other people. The other thing I'll say on this is I remember talking to a young woman who grew up in a single parent household, and I remember she said something to me, and it was very innocent. She was only 13 at the time, and she said, "Do you know anybody who's married?" I said, "Yeah, I know a lot of people who've been married." She said, "I don't know anybody who's married." And I think that says a lot about what a lot of our children are growing up kind of dealing with, especially with the war on drugs. It incarcerated so many black men. I know black men who have been in prison since the 80s for possession of minor amounts of drugs. The amount of drugs that you will see anywhere on a college campus all throughout the country, and but yet they've been in prison 30, 40 years, so their children didn't grow up with a father in the house. So and this was a nationwide epidemic, and I think it's something we have to consider when you look at the imbalance between men and women. And the study in The Economist that said that there is a 2.1% decline in the percentage of black women who get married for every 1% increase in the U.S. incarceration rate. And the United States incarcerates more of its citizens than any country in the world, so it really is a serious problem. The last point I'll throw in there is this. And this is, I don't want to be TMI, but I can say my experience as a man, my experience is not everyone's experience, but it is kind of in alignment with what you all are saying that, I became a lot more interesting as a dating option when I became Dr. Watkins and I was 35 years old and I had a little money in the bank than I was when I was a 25-year-old struggling graduate student who could barely pay the rent every month, right? When I was younger, I was being beaten out by older men who had more money, more maturity, more confidence than I had. But when I got to be 35, suddenly the range widens. You can date younger women, older women, etc. And it changes for men. And when I've advised young men who are struggling, maybe they're in their 20s and they can't find a girlfriend, I say, you know what, just keep working hard. By the time you hit 30, 31, a lot of those women that weren't talking to you in their 20s are going to be calling you up in your 30s. Just be focused and don't become a womanizer, but at the same time, just know your options will probably widen. And so that's my experience as a man. I'm not saying that a woman's experience is any different. Not that a woman can't be gorgeous at 40, 50, 60 years old, but it might be a different reality. So that's all I'll say on that. And I hope I didn't say enough to get us in trouble. But then again, I'm hanging with two women that are just big troublemakers that are probably
Oh,
going to. But I want people to leave their comments, and I want to say thank you both very much for doing this. I
what a
appreciate
pleasure
it.
being with you. And Noma, what a pleasure being with you. A
Yes,
delight.
is it?
I hope we can keep talking. My goodness, I think we have so much that we could agree on, and there might even be a few things we disagree on. I just have one question for you, Dr. Boyce.
Please.
When are you getting married?
I'm getting married on the same. I will be getting married on the.
See what
I will be getting married.
was.
I will be getting married on my wedding day. So whatever date I put on the invitation that you receive in the mail, that is the day I'll be getting married. How about that?
Well, maybe I should just make it my business to ask you this pretty regularly because I think this is an important thing.
For the
You
record,
did say
Susan
you
asks
wanted
me this every time we
spontaneous.
talk. Wait, what you say,
Right.
Noma?
I said you did say you wanted this to be a spontaneous conversation.
Yeah.
Spontaneity is totally fine. This is so much better than the View because at least here the people that are talking actually have brains in their head. So so I enjoy talking to both of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
My
What a
pleasure.
pleasure being with you. Have a great day and great holiday weekend. Mwah. Love you both.
Love you too,
Bye bye.
and everybody. This is Susan Patton, aka the Princeton Mom. You should check out her book, Mary Smart. And this is Nomalanga Mushali Moses, founder of HealthyBlackWoman.com. She's also the former Mrs. Botswana. I don't. Did you know that, Susan? That Noma was. We have a beauty queen in our midst, international beauty queen.
I didn't know that, but I must tell you, I don't really love splitting a screen with a gorgeous woman like that. I don't like that. I like splitting a screen with you, with your big bald head. Great.
Well, yes, you're right. I am not a gorgeous woman, so there you go. I will give you that. It, well, you know what? Noma's as beautiful as a human being as she is as a person, and also,
Thank
well,
you.
if that makes any sense. And the other point I wanted to share on that is
Is
what
anybody else as beautiful as they are a
you
person?
are absolutely
I'm just saying.
wonderful and
Anybody
gorgeous.
else? Just while we're on this call, finishing up.
And
Fine.
I love you to death. You are amazing. You are so amazing. And if I didn't think you were great, would I put up with all the backlash I get from all the people who say you need to stop talking to that white lady? She's just crazy. I like talking to you because I think people need to hear from perspectives that differ from their own. That is an important part of your growth.
Absolutely.
It's not comfortable. It's easier to listen to people who are going to just agree with everything you say, but you don't grow that way. So I love talking to you because I know where your heart is, and I appreciate every conversation we have. So
Thank you.
thank you, ladies, very, very much. It was great
Thank
talking
you.
to you, and everybody who's watching. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.